And what's up, everyone? It's me, Pat, joined with my actual all three co-hosts tonight and a special guest, Ross Merriam. What's up, sir?
Hello.
Hey, bud. So we got Nan, we got Brandon. Brandon has no cam because, well, we all know how janky that was. So.
Yeah, he doesn't have headsets either.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm going to have to mute and unmute my mic whenever I'm going to talk. The good part of this is that you guys will know, because I'm going to unmute my mic, you'll hear yourselves talking, and then it's like, oh, Brandon needs to say something.
Wow. Oh, my God.
So that's the kind of show we're going to have tonight, guys.
And this is with Ross, guys. So the reason I actually wanted to bring Ross on, guys, if you haven't met the man, he is, watching him play is just awesome. I've watched all of Star City, and I've played in a few Star City events, and he is pretty much known. Well, last standard was mono blue, and of course always elves. Am I right, Ross?
At least recently, in 2012, which is the first year I started playing a lot of SCG events, it was Blue White Delver and Maverick. But I actually played elves before I played Maverick. Switched on, then Maverick got bad, and I switched back to elves from there. So certainly the deck I have the most experience with.
So you've got to be happy with the St. Louis results then. 4 elves decks in the top 8.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I had a smile ear to ear on that one. So when did you start playing, Ross?
I started playing, or I learned how to play in the mid-90s, and then I started playing. That was with my brother, actually, and then I started playing myself in 2001 when Odyssey came out. I started playing competitively in 2003, playing Blue Green Manus. So competitive Magic for a little over 10 years.
Very nice. So you've got the brain, So we'll definitely probably have to poke at you with a little cons to see where you're going to lie with cons, because you weren't at the last tournament, were you? Were you at Jersey?
I was.
And what were you playing in Standard?
I played Green Devotion, Splashing Black.
You top 8. Excuse me, sir. You were there. Wow.
The top 4 thing?
Yeah, top thing. I
Punt!
That today. Punt. So, is that the deck you're sticking with, or are you gonna?
You never know. I definitely have to wait and see what happens with the Pro Tour, and then I'll take it from there. I would certainly like to keep playing this deck. It's fun. It's very powerful. Doomig Giant is just a busted Magic card, so it would be nice. But I mean, last year I started out playing the White Weenie deck, and then switched off of that. The year before that, I brewed up a junk tokens deck that was really good in the early metagame of Miracles and Zombies, but then once Flash and Thunderbolt Hawkeye got big, the deck was just completely unplayable. So, I mean, I've oddly been pretty successful the last couple of years playing against these early metagames that are supposed to be so hard to nail down, and I've been pretty good at nailing them down myself, but you're never really sure where they're going to go from there, and they tend to evolve so to be so divergent from the initial expectation that the decks that I build to take advantage of those early metagames are rarely well positioned later on.
Well, I mean, the early metagame is so much different than, I mean, anything later on when decks are starting to get figured out, cards are getting figured out, more to the set, what might it be? That's where I see it. I mean, the early game, a lot of red, always. I don't know if you saw a lot of red this weekend.
Played it 5 times.
5 times? So
Plus-
you had to
plus
love
one
it
game.
Yeah. I was going to say, you had to love it when Doomwake hit the field, and they were like, aw.
Yeah, that was
It was
pretty
pretty
great. Love the Doomwake Giant versus like Mono Black or Mono Red. It's a lot of bloats right there.
In addition to 5 red aggro decks, I played against 2 tokens decks, Mardu and Jeskai, so that they're casting Hordling Outburst, and I'm casting Doomwake Giant. You can imagine which one comes out ahead.
Yeah.
Super solid.
That
It was pretty comical. Just 7 nearbys in the Swiss rounds of a tournament.
That's kind of
I'll take it.
ridiculous. Yeah.
So actually,
I love Doomwake. I think he's a awesome card.
Yeah.
So
I actually was wondering, like, how did you land on that deck specifically? And like most of the Doomwake Giants, I don't think many people were expecting that to be a big card. Obviously, you did some work. Was this just you making it out with your friends and kind of testing a bunch, or did you just kind of figure it out on your own?
I definitely had a group of people I worked with, locals from Connecticut, and I proxied up a gauntlet and sort of took charge of organizing everyone and getting us together. And the early gauntlet was mainly monsters type decks. I had a Nihilist and a Ruglist, red and black aggro, and some black-based removal heavy mid-range decks, Bug and Junk. So I had those 6 decks to go and a few brews, and one person took it upon himself to try to make Reanimator work, so he really worked on that. And early on in the testing process, I wasn't happy with the monsters decks, which really wasn't surprising to me. I don't really think they're theoretically sound. And so I moved to Green Devotion to see how that would work, because I really just wanted my carry to decks to go as big as possible. And the Devotion deck was impressive, although the early list I had was with a Red Splash, the more typical Red Splash, for Xenagos, and I had Crater's Claws, which was quite good. And if you look at the results from Edison, was good for several other people too. There were a few copies in the top 8.
yeah, Crater's Claw, I think, caught a few people. Because it is a very solid card.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes early in the game you need to kill a 2/1, sometimes in the mid game you need to kill a Planeswalker, and sometimes the board stalls and you just need to kill your opponent, and it does all 3 of those things.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you decided on going black. I mean, I saw on your sideboard 2 Heroes Downfalls. Was that a little rough on mana for you, or?
Yeah, I knew the downfall would be a little rough, but I really needed a card that would kill both Pelucanos and the Mirror if they landed theirs first, and Planeswalkers out of the mid-range decks. And the ones I was most concerned about were Ashiok and Kiora, and that's just the only card that can do it. It's worth noting that if you have a black land in play and a Voyaging Satyr, you can make 2 black that way, so you effectively have 8 mana creatures that can make black mana in addition to the 8 lands.
True.
But it's possible I should have played like one of the Gain a Life coming to play tapped green-black lands, maybe even 2, but I really wanted to have as many untapped lands as I could to make the deck flow more smoothly.
Yeah, I feel like for the Devotion list, you probably just want all the untapped lands possible. Like, those are just so important, getting your Mystic early, or, you're carried it on turn 2 at least. Like, you just can't afford to sit there and do nothing first 2 turns.
Exactly. And I have 16 turn 1 green sources for Elvish Mystic, which puts you at like 92%, I think, to have it.
Wow.
And so maybe cutting 1 is reasonable, but I always hedge towards the most consistent and powerful thing I can do, especially early in the format, and it paid off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, now, did you see the Jeskai decks coming in? Like, I mean, was that... I think a lot of people were a little shocked at these
Oddly
tempo
enough,
decks.
that I think they were the best decks in the tournament, but oddly enough, I'm friends with Kevin Jones. He's from the New York area, and in Philadelphia for the WMCQ, he talked to me a little about a Just Guy tempo deck he was working on. So he had the idea even back then, which is I think before the entire spoiler was out.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I had some inclination that a Jeskai sort of quasi burn deck was viable, but I didn't realize it would be as successful as it was. And when I saw the deck on paper, I certainly didn't want to play against it. It's the exact type of deck that prays against Rantex. And that bore itself out in the semis when, I mean, I took a pretty easy game one when he had to use a lot of his resources to kill my creatures because he fell a little behind early, and I was able to just consistently make land drops and have plays every turn. But then the next two games, game two, he had a good draw on the play and just steamrolled me, even though my draw was also quite good. Then game three, my draw didn't quite cooperate. I don't think I had the necessary sideboard cards to combat that matchup, and it was pretty easy for him to dispatch me in 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why. I mean, but you are running Nylea's Disciple, which is probably one of your best sideboard cards for that matchup. So
yeah, definitely brought in all 4, but like you have to stop the Mantis Rider eventually, or they're just gonna hold off your team long enough to burn you out, even if you gain 6-10 life. I think I played one in game 2 and gained 6 off of it, but he had 2 Mantis Riders, so it was, all it did was reset the board for the next turn.
That's a little disgusting when you have that many Mantis Riders. That is a card
he actually drew all 4 that game.
Oh,
and,
but gross.
Only played 2 so he could move up some counter spells.
I feel like one of the problems with the Nylea's Emissary, like you talked about it a bit, but sometimes you'll play it and you really need a creature that's actually effective on the board, and it just really isn't. Random 3/3s for 4 are not good. So if you're spending 4 mana, you want like a Polychronos to be able to monstrous next turn and take down something, or at least like a 5/5/2 attack. Not
sure.
Hey, check out my 3/3. It's bad. That's the lightning strike.
Fortunately, that 3/3 is still effective against the aggressive decks where you really want it because all their creatures are 2/1s.
Yeah, for sure.
Disciple was definitely an all-star when I got paired against red deck after red deck in the Swiss. But yeah, the deck, one, in theory, it's not well prepared for a tempo deck, and my list in particular I don't think was going to be very good. Doomwing Giant is only okay against him. I know he sideboarded out his ground creatures, so it's not even after board I don't really get to kill Rabble Master tokens. I actually boarded out the Constellation package against him to bring in Disciples and Arbor Colossus and a couple of removal spells to help deal with Mantis Rider. I mean, if you get stuck with a removal spell in your hand and they don't draw the Mantis Rider and they just play their normal game anyway, and you have a dead card, that's no good. You really need your cards to line up very well in the matchup to win, and that's a sign that you're not in a good spot.
Now I gotta ask one question about it because I'm a big proponent of just haymaker match. Let's just put our arms down and tap it, swing everything at once. One Nissa though, I mean, was it just you just needed that one little bit, or?
Actually, that's the one slot. If I had to play the tournament over again, I would have changed, and I had a Farika in that slot, and then the Nissa in the board. So I had 3 Nissas in the board total. On Friday, when we got to Edison, and I ended up moving a Nissa to the board over the Farika, sort of thinking that slot and those cards were mainly there to fight the removal heavy decks, and Nissa would be better in those matchups. And I also thought Nissa would be better in the Devotion Mirrors, and I was especially wrong on the second point. And you see it bear out in the top 8, where my game 3 was on camera, in the Devotion Mirror, where Farika put in a lot of work. And I think I would have liked to have the Farika in the main. Nissa, I mean, it is very good against the Thoughtseize Downfall decks, but it's quite ineffective against everything else. And so I think it's going to be a sideboard card, at least in the next few weeks as this format takes shape. It doesn't really match up that well against a lot of the top cards in the format. Stormbreath Dragon, Sarkhan, Butcher of the Horde, even something like Mantis Rider gets down early and can attack it down to 2 hits at least. And so it didn't do enough in my testing. It's not that good against the aggressive decks. I mean, when you get to 5 mana and you cast it, you can't really make a 4/4 blocker. So you have to hope to have some forests in play so you can use the other +1 and maybe land a Carry Tit or another mana guy to trade, and that just wasn't very effective.
No, I can understand also why Freaka, because you're running that whole constellation package, and Freaka just builds off that if there's guys in your yard.
Yeah, it lets you really easily get multiple triggers in one turn, which is where Doomwake just becomes insane.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1/1 Death Touchers are really, really good in the ramp and devotion mirrors where the board tends to clog. And so you can actually break through that with just Death Touch creatures that will end up trading for their guys, or you can sit back with them if you're a little behind and they can't really do a lot. Like, we found pretty early on that Hornet Queen was the game breaker in the green mirrors because the just a swarm of 1/1 Death Touch bodies could really trump the board, and that's actually what got me onto Doomwake Giant in the first place. It was a card that was very good against aggressive decks that could also break what we thought was the stalemate breaker in the green mirrors. So I had the re-trump, so to speak, where we both played our Hornet Queens, and then I played Doomwake, and your Hornet Queen's dead, and so I'm very far ahead that way. And it ended up bearing out in the Devotion mirrors where the board would clog, and I would eventually set up a board with multiple Doomwake Giants in play, and then play 2 enchantments and just wipe their entire team. Or at least wipe their entire team just like a single Pelucanos or something, and then I'd attack with 3 of my guys, and they'd have to jump block. When I was playing my winning in round 9, it was a Devotion Mirror, and the game went so long, and I cast several Genesis Hydras. I actually put all 4 Doomwake Giants into play, and the 4th one killed 3 Corsair Crucifixes, and I killed all of his mana guys leading up to that, and so he wasn't really ever able to get enough mana to go over the top of me, which gave me time to find the 4th one, and that put the nail in the coffin.
That's kind of disgusting. I'm not gonna lie, Ross.
So I actually have a question, but it looks like Brandon wants to talk first. Because I'm hearing things.
I guess you guys can't hear that. I was actually just going to ask Genesis Hydra. I think most lists are not playing 4 of this card. I might be wrong on that. I didn't think that they would be playing a lot. Like in my devotion testing, I've been running like 2. Thought about the 3rd, but then kind of went back on it. Is it something that you like as a 4 of, or would you cut back on it a bit if you were to redo the weekend?
If I had to redo just that weekend, knowing that the Jeskai deck exists, I think you have to make some adjustments. But without knowing the Jeskai deck exists, I think 4 Hydra was the right call. A lot of green devotionalists play Quarter Calling, and I really don't like that card. I think it's essentially just strictly worse than Genesis Hydra that will do the same thing for 1 mana cheaper and will give you a substantial body and 2 devotion attached to it. So the card, it's really good again against removal heavy decks. It's really good in the mirror because it'll dig you towards your game breaking cards, either the 2nd or 3rd copy of Doomwake Giant, maybe a Hornet Queen, or Nylea, which is really specifically there to break stalemates. And so it'll dig you there almost as reliably as Cord, while being much better in the mid game and a much better value play against the black decks. And there are times against the aggressive decks where you have to cast it for 2 or 3 and hope to hit a mana guy, or maybe there's one on top of the Courser, to develop your board and really set up your big plays later. Round 1 of the tournament, I actually had to cast it for 1, and I just hit a blind Elvish Mystic.
Nice.
That was kind of nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the way it should be. So,
Justice.
So I gotta ask. We always ask this when we have someone come on. Favorite card of all time?
Well, before you get sucked into that, actually,
Yeah, I believe Nanman had a question.
I actually did have a question in regards to like the event itself. With your devotion deck going into the tournament, what deck were you worried to be playing against? You were saying how like post tournament you were worried kind of just Sky, but going into it, what with that deck in particular, what were you kind of worried about playing?
I was having a little bit of trouble, not a ton, with the bug deck that Shaheen Sarani had written about on SCG, just a bug mid-range deck. As I mentioned, like Kiora and Ashiok being the reason that the downfall was in the sideboard. Like, them landing an early Ashiok was a lot of troubles. That matchup was pretty close. Unfortunately, I didn't see a lot of it. And you're usually worried about some non-interactive decks, like a heroic aggro deck that could go over the top. And I think that's a space that people haven't explored yet that could be very fruitful going forward. And in particular, I was just worried about the card End Hostilities, which I didn't think would be that played and ended up not being that played. there's a single copy in all the top 8 decks in Edison, and it was in the sideboard of the red-white deck. So fortunately, there weren't a lot of end hostilities around, and I think that'll change going forward too, which is another issue for the Devotion deck. If you're Black Splash, you can at least get some discard options. You can, of course, play Thoughtseize that everybody knows about, but Brain Maggot might also be a good option because of the synergies with the Constellation part of the deck. So you have some options there to fight end hostilities, but it's a very scary card for a deck that is 36 permanents and 24 lands.
Right.
And in particular, 36 creatures, if you move the Nissa to the board and add the Freaka, although Freaka doesn't die to end hostilities.
Very
So-
true.
So after the weekend, besides Jeskai, is there anything else that you saw this weekend that you're thinking you're going to see a lot more of?
It's possible that the Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck that lost playing for top 8 in Indianapolis ends up being very good. It's certainly very good in Modern. It might be too good in Modern, but it could end up being quite good in Standard as well. Jeskai Ascendancy is a really abusable card. It has a ton of abilities, and they all combine in very odd and interesting ways to make a card that is, while subtle, very, very possibly broken. Like when you get going in any of these Jeskai Ascendancy combo decks, it is very hard to fizzle because every single spell you cast typically is a cantrip to begin with because you're playing a combo deck,
Right.
and then in addition, loots. So every single card you cast sees 2 cards, which is twice as powerful as Glimpse of Nature. I don't fizzle that often with a Glimpse.
Nope.
Especially with 2 of them.
I mentioned like Quicken being in this format would be kind of silly with those Jeskai decks.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
This is a cantrip that also just lets you cast your sorceries when you really need to, if you're trying to go off at instant speed or something. So that's also just silly. It's like mid combat, okay, you're done blocking? Alright, I'll kill you. Okay, good job.
That's more possible for Modern than it is Standard. The Standard version of the
Yeah.
deck uses a lot of cantrip enchantments from Theros block to go off. So
Okay.
it's definitely a sorcery speed deck. Whereas the version in Modern plays just the blue cantrip, Sleight of Hand, Serum Visions, Taxing Probe. It even plays the blue Wisps. Just blue, untap a creature, draw a card, I think. So that with Ascendancy.
Yeah.
Mana.
Yeah, that's kind of disgusting. I didn't think about that. That's where you miss in Modern Ponder and Preordain. But, you know,
Pat, I think I just thought of another deck we can play for versus.
which one?
That modern deck sounds sweet. I want to do that.
There was an original Modern deck actually. I don't know if Ross has ever seen it, but it was the Paradise Mantle on the Niv Magus
Pal?
Elemental. I think it was.
Niv-Magus.
Was it Niv Magus? It was something like that, and you just literally cantrip the whole time. Went off. and
Oh,
just kept...
it was on Blister Coil Weird.
Yeah,
I
Blister
remember.
Coil. Yep.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was a straight cantrip. It was ridiculous. I kind of, everyone at the store didn't believe me, and I had all the cards, so I'm like, I'll put it together and watch. And then they went, I hate you.
I hate you because I don't have a single removal spell for your creature-based combo deck. Ah.
So it is, and I agree that the Ascendancy combo is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, the real gain for the Modern version of the deck is being able to play birds and Noble Hierarch. So you
Yep.
have you have 8 1-mana accelerants that reliably curve into Ascendancy.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful deck. Just turn 1 bird, turn 2 Ascendancy, Taxing Probe you to get started, can easily win the game. Turn 2.
Yep.
Not close.
Yeah, we'll do that on the versus side. We'll pull that up and do some.
I'm sure the other person will have tons of fun.
It's Brandon versus me.
Dibs the combo deck.
So we'll
Dibs
rock
the
paper,
call.
scissors. Yeah, our
You
sponsor.
call dibs, you're screwed.
Yeah, you know, I'll just play something really big then, Ross.
Play
Whatever.
a billion Thoughtseizes, then Abrupt Decays,
Yeah.
some main deck
Oh.
Reclamation Sage,
Oh,
Yep. We'll make it
Gunshot
happen.
as mana creatures.
We'll make it
Go
happen.
real deep.
man, now you're taking all the fun out of it. All right. Mysterious combo deck coming down next time we play. You don't know what it is though.
No, the next time we play is next week, and that's standard. We're
I guess
brew-
it's standard, isn't it?
It is brewing in standard. So
See in that format too.
yeah. Yep.
Dibs a combo deck.
Whatever. You can have a combo deck next week. I will run my my own homebrew, which everyone hates. I call it the Fun Police again. It's a control. It's not tempo. It's true hardcore Jeskai control. It went 3-0 already this week.
I hear that Anger the Gods is like a ridiculous card in this format, so I'm afraid.
It's pretty amazing in the sideboard. I'm not gonna lie.
I think it'd be like 3 main deck.
It's pretty amazing, and then hostility. And I actually become a fan more and more of Dig Through Time.
Yeah,
so good.
Dig is definitely where you want to be in terms of card advantage in this format.
It is. I mean, it's no Sphinx's Rev, but it is definitely. When I can cast it for 2 at instant speed on the end of their turn, set up my next. Basically, look at it and go, oh, well, I can play this Elizabeth next turn and I can win. Kind of okay.
Yeah,
honestly,
I
it's
can
like
imagine casting a card on 5 pretty often, or maybe casting it on 6 the turn after you cast End Hostilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably, it's obviously not quite the same card as Sphinx's Rev because it's just pure card advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also do it in instant speed and all that, but it does pretty much the same thing. You just don't flood out on lands in your hand, so obviously you can't make the land drops that you wanted to. But if you cast it for like 4 mana, I'd argue it's better. Like a lot of the times, the card's just gonna get you exactly what you want at that time. You've been hitting land drops anyway because you're casting divination and whatnot, and then it's gonna get you your Wrath when you need it, or your Elspeth like you were talking about. So I don't really know if it's that much of a downgrade. Obviously, the life not being there is bad, but it's so much cheaper. Like just the mana cost difference is a really big deal. So
it is.
I mean, it might be better.
It builds towards a different type of deck. Instead of just building around Revelation itself and using the insane resource advantage that casting several Revelations in a game will give you, I think you're going to end up seeing decks that trade a lot in the early game, then have this Dig Through Time card to either find the nail in the coffin. Probably Elspeth, maybe something else. I mean, maybe even Narset, because flipping Dig Through Time off of Narset is rather disgusting as well.
That sounds
I have
amazing.
Narset.
This deck needs to happen.
I have Narset. I have not put her in yet. I'm actually putting Deflecting Palm in my sideboard now, though. After watching Jadine just do work with that on stream multiple times, I chatted with her for a second. I'm like, is that card as good as I think it is? She goes, oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's another card I didn't really want to see playing Devotion, especially that method just cuts out my avenues of winning. Jadine's deck likely would have been even a worse matchup for me than Kevin's list.
Yeah, she goes, I did not. She hit me on Twitter. She goes, I did not sleeve up Swamps. I said, what did you sleeve up? She goes, if I make it on stream, just watch. And I was shocked. It was pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
I think there were not a lot of Swamps at the tournaments in general. Like, there's the Abzan decks and the Sultai decks, but I didn't see much else. Like there obviously wasn't any. Oh, sorry, there's mono black aggro. Now that I'm thinking about it, so there was a decent amount of Swamps. I was like, there's no Devotion deck. Oh, it can't be good anymore. Well, aggro's still really good, so that's the thing.
I was higher on these aggro decks in my week or two of testing. I thought they were pretty powerful and people might be underrating them, and I ended up being wrong on that last point. People definitely came into this tournament respecting the aggro decks and came prepared, and there's nothing the aggro decks really have in response to Anger the Gods, Drown in Sorrow, even Raise the Alarm, Nixley's Ram, all these cards that are super effective against them, combined with the natural power of Caryatid and Courser. So that this plan of just dumping a bunch of 2/1s on the table, I don't think is going to work going forward unless the metagame shifts pretty dramatically. I think we're going to see people explore slightly bigger aggro decks. Like the Jeskai deck is basically an aggro deck. We might see things like that, and I'm excited to see what people do with Ashclot Phoenix. I think that's a card that's been underexplored and underrated thus far, and it is something that we'll definitely be hearing from, if not at the Pro Tour, then shortly after.
I think I agree with you. You'll see it at the Pro Tour. I think these guys are going to have... They got, a week? Most of them are already there, flying in now. So
yeah, and there's There's a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, so they'll have a week literally just to prove out decks, and Ash Cloud Phoenix just seems so strong. It,
efficient body, evasive, an ability that plays in with the aggressive type of game plan that it wants, that also adds resilience to the multitude of powerful removal spells that we have that normally would really hate on these 4-mana creatures that don't do a lot when they come into play, because they all cost 3, so that you get to trade in a tempo positive way. But when you have resilience to those, you're in a really good spot. So it matches up well against those 3-mana removal spells that everyone has.
Yeah, basically you got to kill it twice or exile it. That's,
yeah,
plain and simple. So
pretty much. I think I'm a little less high on it than some people, but I at first read it and I was like, man, this needs haste for it to be good at all. Clearly not. It's pretty good, and like I don't know if it's gonna be like the single card that's the best at Pro Tour, like from the new set. I think it's really good though. Like it's gonna be good at pressuring planeswalkers as well, which I think is really nice. And
it's a piece. That card into Stormbreath Dragon, like having
gross.
8 power, attacking in the air, you're in a good spot.
Yep, I definitely agree.
That said, I think 4-drop into Stormbreath Dragon, you're still in like an insane spot though. It just doesn't really matter what it is. Stormbreath Dragon's so good.
All right, so let's ask Ross this then, because we had this giant fight last week, Brandon. Stormbreath or Sarkhan? Which do you take, Ross?
This was sort of an interesting decision I had to make in testing how to best differentiate between these two cards, and what the best way was to figure out which one I preferred, or what the subtle differences were between them. What I ended up doing was every deck that wanted that type of card, this sort of 5-mana haste threat, I added whatever number I thought was appropriate in the initial brew, and rather than just having a split of them, I made every single proxy in that deck a split card between Stormbreath Dragon and Sarkhan, and let whoever was playing that deck play at the time whichever one they wanted to, and I'd ask them at the end of a few games, which one did you play more often, which one was better, and get more data that way. So like if they wanted to play 35 Sarkhans and only 2 Stormbreath Dragons over 37 instances, they could do that.
And so which one came up?
We ended up preferring Sarkhan. We thought we didn't monster Stormbreath Dragon that often, and we -3'd Sarkhan a lot, and those were the two main differences. We even ultimated Sarkhan once, and that was pretty nice. What ended up happening in the tournament, I think, was Stormbreath Dragon performed pretty well. The Mardu control deck that finished second, I believe, in 4 Stormbreath Dragons in the main, and he was actually one of my losses, my only loss in the Swiss. We played in round 5, I believe, and he won essentially every game with Stormbreath Dragon. He played on turn 5 every game, and there was one game I was actually able to stabilize and set up a really big turn. It was actually pretty absurd. He had played a Stormbreath Dragon on turn 5, another one on turn 6, and then on turn 7, he was staring down a Hornet Queen. I played one on my own turn 6. And so he couldn't attack, but I was at 7 life, and I had 3 cards in hand. So he passed the turn, let me draw up to 4, and monstrous one of his Stormbreath Dragons to bring me to 3, hoping that I couldn't empty my hand, really, and that he'd get to monstrous the other one for lethal. And I ended up, I had a huge board. I had like 10 Devotion already in play, and I had a Nykthos in play, and I had 3 Voyaging Satyrs. So over the course of this turn, I actually was able to trigger Doomwake Giant 7 times and kill his entire board, including a monstrous Stormbreath Dragon, and attack 22
That's
or something.
awesome.
Like it felt like playing elves. It took like 5 minutes of floating mana and casting a Genesis Hydra, resolving the trigger, putting something else into play, resolving 3 Constellation triggers, maybe drawing 2 cards, shrinking his team slowly, then like untapping the Nykthos with a Voyaging Satyr, going up to 27 mana this time. It was pretty hilarious.
Did his
But maybe
face
for
get
me, less
slowly
for him.
angrier or sadder? As
I'm not sure.
Because that's what I was.
I feel like Every time my opponent does that to me, I just keep smiling. I'm like, this is so awesome.
Yeah,
Obviously, I haven't
may
been in
have
the
more
top 8 of a
impressed than
tournament
anything else.
before. Pardon?
I think he may have been more impressed than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's just an impressive turn. I was playing 2 nights ago. I had like this blue-green devotion deck, and just made 19 Hydras with Hydra Birdmaster. My opponent's like, "Well, that was pretty sick. You win." It's just like this moment where you have to say, "Yep, you
Just
did
attacked for
something really awesome,"
361
and I
damage.
acknowledge that. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
That's
You have a 7/7/2, right? Monsters for 19, so that's another 26. You have 387 damage.
oh
good.
god, that's so disgusting. I hate Hydra Broodmaster so much. Oh, such a bad card.
Such a great
It's a
card.
6-mana 7/7.
Yeah, well, my buddy keeps monstrous thing on me every time we test. He goes, "Oh, I'm going to play Hydra Brewmaster." I'm like, "I hate you right now."
Dude, it's way better than I thought it was. It wins games on its own if you have enough mana. So if you're in a devotion deck and you want like some kind of card to just dump a bunch of mana into at some point, it's a way to do it. And I feel like there's not very good card advantage for the deck. Like there's no Garrick and there's no you can't play like Prime Speaker Zagana or anything. So you're gonna run out of cards and you're just gonna have all this mana and nothing to do with it. So eventually you're just gonna make a billion Hydras and win. Like it's actually playable.
Yeah, you definitely only want it in sort of non-interactive matchups, and that at this point that's really only the devotion mirrors. But it's definitely a reasonable way to break those mirrors open. Like it comes down, it's already bigger than most things anyway, so it's going to give you time to use itself, which is a nice aspect to the card.
Yeah, definitely. So let's ask Ross this. What do you think going forward we'll see at the next Legacy event? Will we see more elves?
I think you're going to see a lot of Treasure Cruise, because people, that's the kind of card that a lot of Legacy players are going to get excited about. It evokes images of these iconic cards. It's super powerful. It goes into the blue decks that everybody likes to play, and everyone is going to want to figure out what the best way to use that card is before the Grand Prix in November. I mean, elves didn't get anything for the new set. We basically know what it is, so the sort of new tech to explore are these delve spells, Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, and even Monetary Swift Spear.
True.
So trying to find the best shelf for that is going to be the most compelling storyline for the next month of Legacy Opens.
Swift Spear was not a card that I expected to see. I hadn't really thought of it though, but it really felt like a Goblin Guide. Like for a couple decks, this is just a Goblin Guide that doesn't have the downside at times. So it's very powerful there. You know, obviously the problem is you can't play it turn 1 and get in for 2, which is where Goblin Guide's really good. But maybe if you want like 6th through 8, or what is it, 5th through 8th copy, could be a thing there. Or we saw it in Delver decks that were just playing 4 Dig Through Time and a lot of ways to, you know, a lot of 1-mana cantrips and stuff like that, and lightning bolts, and, you know, just a bunch of 1-mana spells that are going to A, pump your guy to a guide, and B, fill your graveyard up so quickly so you can refuel right away. So it was really interesting. I thought those decks were really cool. Not one that I saw coming though.
Swift Spear is kind of a beneficiary of these delve cards that are going to encourage you to play even more cheap spells. And so when you have all these 0 and 1-mana spells in your deck that are fueling a powerful delve card, then you might as well have other cards in your deck that take advantage of that. So Monetary Swift Spear and Young Pyromancer are really big gainers from the power of these delve cards.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I mean, if you look at, let's say, Edison, Blue-Red Delver took first place, and Swift Spear and Treasure Cruise both in that deck.
Yeah, both 4 of
Really?
them.
Yeah, both 4 of.
Wow, that's impressive. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now I'm happy.
Yeah, I actually ran into Swift Spear at the standard we do. We do it at our store every Monday. And a guy was running a mono red deck with Swift Spear. And I'll tell you what, for a little bit, it gave me some issues. Because that pumping is just kind of ridiculous.
Also,
one of my
I mean,
friends-
you touched on it, but Pyromancer's just sick with these cards. I'm really happy because that's one of my favorite cards in Legacy. Pyromancer's just really fun.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the best place to go with these decks is going to be Grixis, because the discard spells are going to allow you to break up your opponent's treasure cruises much more easily, so that you can break parity and continue to have amazing synergy with Young Pyromancer. And gives you more disruption against the combo decks too, which might take advantage of the Delver decks if they trim on disruption to play more cantrips and treasure cruises, so that you can take advantage of the time they give you when they're trying to set up these powerful plays in the first maybe 2 turns of the game. Maybe you just set up to kill them on turn 2 or turn 3 through a single disruption spell or 2. So having the discard spells is going to help there as well.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Grixis definitely would kind of hurt those cantrippy type deck.
Yeah, and Grixis was one of those Delver decks that, I mean, it played Deathrite Shaman, but didn't play Tarmogoyf, and Goyf is the one that really gets hit by Treasure Cruise, where you have to remove your entire graveyard, and if your opponent's playing it too, like there can be games where Goyf is really ineffective and it stays a 2/3 or worse throughout the course of the game. Deathrite Shaman, you get a lot of your value out of that card on the first couple turns, and you can navigate your way around a Treasure Cruise with Deathrite Shaman in your deck much more easily than you can with a card like Tarmogoyf or, God forbid, Nibble Mongoose out of the Rug Delver decks. Which
Woo, Nibble!
Basically unplayable with Treasure Cruise. So we might see a real final decline in the Rug Delver decks because of the power of the Delve cards. And I've talked a lot about Treasure Cruise, mainly because it fits into these really cheap disruption-heavy decks, but Dig Through Time is also going to be quite good, I think more so in the resilient cantrip-based combo decks, a lot of the Show and Tell decks, and things of that nature, maybe even High Tide, I'm not sure. And we'll see how that bears out over the coming weeks. I know Reed and Matt Costa both played a single copy of Dig Through Time in their Miracles list this weekend. I have yet to talk to them about how they felt about it, but that's definitely these are the cards that are so powerful that some decks that maybe aren't in the market to play a lot of them and really sculpt their game plan around them will still play 1 or 2 of them, because every single deck in this format really naturally fills its graveyard up.
And so the Delve is just so strong. I mean, Murderous Cut. It's a 1 mana, at best 1 mana removal.
Yeah, that could see playing Legacy as well. Maybe there's a 1 or 2 of in a Bug Delver type shell, or even a Bug Control type shell. It's definitely possible. Delves any mechanic that lets you cheat on mana. We've seen them all get abused throughout the years. We had even back to Urza's Saga, we had the mechanic that let you untap lands when you cast a spell, so it was essentially free. We saw it happen with Storm very notably over the years. We've seen it happen with Phyrexian Mana and Snapcaster Mage. We saw it happen with Cascade. We've seen it happen with Miracle and Terminus, and Delve is just another continuation of these ways that you get really undercosted spells, and Delve in particular is one that plays so well with cards that everyone is already playing in Legacy that just fills your graveyard really quickly, that we might see these cards end up being very, very impactful in the Legacy format. Could be another major shift in the same vein as Innistrad when it introduced Delver Secrets and Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, Gerard Fabiano actually in his Sultai Delver deck had a Dig Through Time in there.
Yeah, he had one.
It's good.
Steven Mann top 8'd. He had 2 copies, I think, of Dig Through Time.
Yep.
People are figuring these cards out.
So
I wonder if this makes it more necessary. Like, I don't think you're going to want this first Delver decks, but if this makes it more necessary to have more Rest in Peace in your sideboard, I think we've seen a couple white decks maybe cut on it a bit with, I don't know, Judge doesn't seem as popular anymore, so it's not as scary, but obviously it's still good for like the Goyf decks and stuff. Yeah. They kind of keep it in check.
Those 2 brought a lot of incidental graveyard hate to the format, and has scared off a little bit of the graveyard decks, and that has allowed people to trim on graveyard hate as a whole. But Jerry Thompson actually wrote an article today on Star City that speculated about the effects of Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. Actually, maybe it was yesterday, but wrote one this week. And he noted that being able to main deck Rest in Peace against decks that are playing these Delve spells is going to be pretty powerful, and Miracles is a deck that has done that in the past. there was a version of the deck that Caleb Durward either developed or at least championed, playing main deck Rest in Peace, had Energy Field as the 2-card combo with it, and then one Helm of Obedience to possibly set up a combo kill, and it glued it all together, playing a few copies of Enlightened Tutor, and then could use Enlightened Tutor in other ways as well, either find a counterbalance, find a Sensei Stop, maybe find Humility or some other some type of hate card, maybe even Back to Basics, because that deck plays a ton of basic lands, so you can do some things with Enlightened Tutor as well, which even has some synergy with Sensei Stop. You can tutor for your card and immediately draw it. So we might see a return to those old style. Yeah, we might see a return to those types of Miracle decks.
It's kind of cool. Speaking of someone who owns foil Rest in Peace, yeah, I'd like that to get more expensive. So
foil legacy cards don't have a history of exploding in price. That's
that's
never
true.
Foil
Yeah.
charges aren't like $30 right now.
No, I mean even Murderous Cuts like get 20 or something. Like, geez,
Yeah.
this card just
Dig
came
through
out.
time
It's
is
uncommon.
really
This is
high, too.
crazy.
Yeah, foil digs high, but if you could, I looked at it, I'm like, I'm just gonna buy some regular ones and hang on to them for a while.
Yeah.
And play them. Lots and lots of play.
Yeah, I mean, they're even commons too. Like, you just open a bunch of packs and you'll probably find one. Obviously, the foil's less common, but I think the fact that the card has such a big impact on Legacy and is common, like all the cards that are really big in Legacy, other than Dig Through Time, which I think isn't quite as big here, are commons and uncommons in this set. Almost makes me think that they did stuff like this on purpose because they understand it's so expensive. But the effects in Legacy are also not ones that you generally have on rare cards a lot of the time. Like, obviously, you know, some of the good creatures and whatnot, but I don't think Nimble Mongoose is a rare, and it really doesn't feel like one. Stuff like that, where it's just, okay, I mean, this is a good effect. It's okay in Standard or Draft, but it's really good in this low, this high power, low mana cost format, and that's really what commons are. A lot of them are just cheap, but you can't make them rares because they're so inexpensive.
Yeah, the rares often have these sort of big splashy effects, and that's not really what good decks are made of. It's really the unsung, very clean, very efficient type cards that are important, especially in higher powered formats like Legacy.
So we
you're not
actually
gonna
had a
see
good
them.
question, and since we have all of us here, let me kick it out to you guys. Son of Duh, 1981 asks, what is the purpose of the last ability of Sarkin for Khans of Tarkir?
Is that the you draw 3 and then discard your hand 1?
Yeah, it gives you an emblem that is sort
Okay.
of like Grafted Skullcap.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, I can see it with even any type of devotion deck where you're just spilling your hand out. Drawing extra cards is never a bad thing.
Yeah, feels kind of win more. Like if you're bashing with Storm or like the 4/4 flyer every turn, you're probably gonna win anyway. So maybe if you've got like a second Sarkhan in your hand, you can like ult at 6, play another one attack. But I don't know. I feel like I just want to keep having my 4/4. It seems better.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimates on Planeswalkers are rarely used anyway. If you're activating your Planeswalker a bunch of times, they're probably dead. But if you're trying, oh yeah, I mean, I could see a weird game where you really want the emblem. The emblem's a very powerful effect, drawing 3 cards every turn.
Yeah.
Even if you have to discard your hand, it's not like you have to put a bunch of conditional instants in your deck like counter spells that are going to be bad with the emblem. You can just play a bunch of burn spells and just start launching them at your opponent's face or do something with it. I mean, there was a shop variant in Vintage for a long time that played Uba Mask, this obscure Kamigawa rare that forces every player to exile any card that they would draw, and then you can only play cards that are exiled. You can play cards exiled with Uba Mask that turn, and would play with Bazaar of Baghdad. So once you got to Hellbent, you just draw a card every turn and then activate Bazaar and essentially put all 3 cards into your hand and just start casting a bunch of spells every turn. So you're like, this emblem's pretty similar, and that's a powerful thing to be doing if your game's going to go long and you need the cards. But it's very likely that you're just going to end the game with the +1 anyways. So
Right.
I don't know if there's a huge purpose to it, but it's a very red-like effect, and it's a very powerful, splashy effect. So it makes sense as the ultimate on a red Planeswalker.
Very true. I agree. I mean, how can I not? That's right on. So. And yeah, Spike just asked about the Monastery Swift Spear. Yeah, we just talked about that guy. He's going to be a beast for a while.
Yeah,
Maybe.
those cards that I initially
He's pretty
underrated that I think will be quite good. All my opponents playing red aggro decks definitely had them in their decks because most of them were sort of boss sly, sort of slight heroic sub-theme type decks where they had Dragon Mantle and Hammer Hand and Titan Strength and things like that. So you very frequently get to a 2-3 or 3-4. So
I really like that card with Dragon Mantle. Just like anything that cantrips is going to be so good.
Yeah.
Just check out my aggressive one drop that I make even better next turn, and the turn after, and the turn after, and everything. And I'm drawing cards. Like, it's gonna be really powerful. This card's got a future in standard for sure. And probably in Legacy. Like, I can't see why a weekend of being a 4-of in the winning deck would change.
It's gonna be
I don't know how you sideboard against it. It's like sideboarding versus Goblin Guide again. It's just like a hasty threat. You can't really you can't really put cards in your deck that just completely shut it down. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, you don't really answer the card directly. The way you answer it is by attacking their ability to cast spells. So if you're able to stunt their mana or discard a lot of their efficient spells from their hand, then you're gonna render it a 1/2 more often than not, and that's how you do it. So I attack them on that angle. And Jerry actually brought that up in his article as well. Chalice the Void and other type of virtual card advantage cards in Legacy might also increase in value.
Yeah.
So that's what we need, more lockout decks.
I am no stranger to Chalice the Void.
Yeah,
I am not either. Imagine
on the horizon anyway with Rabble Master.
Yeah, but Goblin Stompy. I played Dragon Stompy back in the day. So I can move over to Goblin Stompy. I can Rabble Master some people.
Rabble Master him in Legacy.
Pretty good.
I could see that happening.
Anthony Lowry actually
and is both very popular and good.
Lowry sideboarded a couple copies of Rabble Master in his Sneak and Show list from this weekend. Got to cast one of them on turn 1. City of Traders, awesome. Lotus Petal, Rabble Master. Getcha.
You didn't stop me from comboing?
Surprise.
Yeah. Had Force of Will for the guy's Force of Will. Ended the game real quick.
Oh, that's gross.
Wow. That's wow. Yeah, that guy had to have been sitting there going, yep, that's about it.
Yeah, he was a little salty.
Yeah, I was gonna say, got a little vinegar going on. A little vinegary. All right, so let's see. I always take questions, Ross. Just so you know, when they ask questions, I just feed them right to our guest. So Spike did ask, "Is Charlotte's Bug going to fail pretty hard?"
This is sort of the other talked about point for the effects of these delve spells in Legacy. We've seen how easy it is to set up Treasure Cruise, and by comparison, it is quite difficult to set up Ancestral Vision. You have to wait 4 turns, or you have to sort of use a Brainstorm and set up a Shardless Agent, or you can just be insanely lucky. It's possible that the Delver decks having access to a really strong card advantage piece in Treasure Cruise will really help them match up well against the strategy of Shardless Bug, where they're just trying to grind you out. And it is possible that the Shardless decks do get significantly worse, and we'll see that. I'm not one to speculate a ton. I'll speculate for any given weekend for a tournament I'm going to, but generally I try to let things play out and react to it. I do think I am actually playing in the next Legacy Open, because we don't have Opens this weekend because of the Grand Prix that Star City is hosting. The following weekend is the Pro Tour, and so Star City is running their States program. And the next weekend there's an Open weekend in Worcester, Massachusetts, so I'll be at that one. So I guess I do have to prepare for whatever people are going to be doing. But
is it Worcester? For
me, preparing for Elves means changing one card in my Elves deck and calling it good. But hopefully Elves is still good. Losing Shardless as a matchup would certainly be bad for Elves.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know Worcester was next.
So,
yeah,
actually,
2 weeks off in the Open Series.
Yeah. Should be soon. So I don't really think that Shardless was gonna suffer too much. Like I didn't think that they would be interested in dig through, or what's that one? Treasure Cruise, like maybe a copy. Like they can
Well,
fill their
they're
graveyard
certainly
pretty
not
quick.
interested.
Yeah, like they're playing Goyfs, so I don't think they really care about it too much. Do you think like is that really a big deal for them? Just having other decks that have this ability? Because I feel like they attack the game in a different way. You know, they're more of a grindy deck. Um, I guess giving your opponent an Ancestral Recall is pretty bad, so maybe that does
Yeah.
make sense.
When you're trying to grind them out and they're casting Ancestral Recall, it's pretty hard to do.
Yeah, I guess they're used to being the only deck casting Ancestral Recall in the format, and that's just not a thing anymore. So,
They could even
That's too
suspend
bad.
it
It's
up
like my
on
favorite deck.
just cast a few removal spells, and then once it unsuspends, they're super far ahead on resources, and that was what they would use to leverage to win the game. So if you don't actually consistently generate that resource advantage, then you're going to be in a tight spot. And not to mention, people are going to naturally make your Tarmogoyfs and Deathray Charms worse by delving cards out of
Right.
the way. So
Yeah.
you have that as well. In addition to the how I say this, their strategic deficiency. They're going to lose some tactical edge where their cards just don't match up as well against opposing decks.
Now,
So I thought was actually that it was going to be a better deck because Murderous Cut seems like a card that they would want. So I'm like, oh, okay, they got a new tool. Cool. You can maybe use like a 1 or 2 of. Because they fill their graveyard pretty quickly. And, you know, there's like a lot of fetch lines and sorceries in instance that the deck plays. You don't have to completely cut yourself off of, you know, creatures or, you know, lands or whatever for your Goyfs. Seems like something you could still do. But yeah, I guess everyone else drawing 3 cards as well is a pretty big blow to the deck. That's sad. It's a pretty cool deck. Like it's not, unique. Obviously, Legacy has a lot of grindy decks, but I don't know. I always like it a lot. I guess it's casting Ancestral Recall is just fun.
Yeah, to be fair, in addition to Ancestral Vision, it also has Shard of Sagen and Baleful Strix, and it's very good at landing and protecting Jace, so it might still be well positioned to play the same type of game. It might just get slightly worse, where instead of really shifting the matchups, it just makes them a little bit worse across the board. So instead of being really good, it gets relegated to a pretty good sort of tier 1.5, tier 2 kind of strategy instead of the real powerhouse we've seen it be this year. So you just sort of have to wait and see, and everyone's going to develop their own opinion about it. But the fate of Shardless Bug in the wake of these delve spells has been a pretty big talking point for Legacy moving forward, and it's definitely something that anybody following the Open Series is going to keep an eye on.
Now, transitioning into the Open Series, are you going to start doing the grind there, sir, since you're number 2?
Well, I'm number 2, but CVM is already qualified. So essentially, I'm number 1 for the season, and this season has essentially 9 people qualifying because all the at-large bids happen at the end of the year. So there's 4 seasons, and the winner of each season makes it. The winner of each invitational makes it, and there's 16 total competitors. So there's 8 at-large bids at the end of the season, at the end of the year, which is season 4. And if you take a close look at the standings, you'll see that CVM, BBD, Joe Lissette, and Tom Ross,
yeah.
who are all near the top of the standings, are already qualified. And so with 9 spots to go, we're essentially looking at the top 13 who are qualifying right now. And so I have a pretty big cushion on the bubble. And so I'm feeling pretty good. I don't really have to go out of my way to go to events that I wouldn't normally go to. I can just continue playing my normal opens. I'm going to be in Worcester. I'm going to play states, and I actually get to play 2 states tournaments because Connecticut is on Sunday. So I'm going to go to Rhode Island on Saturday and Connecticut on Sunday and get to play 2.
Nice.
And then I'm actually flying to the Invitational in Seattle a week early to play the Open Series in Portland, which I had planned maybe a month and a half ago by now. So that was already on the docket before I continued my strong run of events to really put a sizable gap between myself and the bubble for qualifying.
Nice.
It's going to be interesting to see how the people near that bubble react right now, because I know we saw Stephen Mann and Logan Mize in New Jersey for the Open last weekend, and they're both from Florida, so I assume they had to fly. And that it's awkward for them because they've got the GP the next weekend, so it's not like they're staying up here and going to multiple tournaments. They're flying straight back and playing in Orlando next weekend, I would assume.
Yeah.
I don't know either of them personally, but That's what I think they did. I saw Todd Anderson post on social media today saying that he had booked a ticket to Minneapolis.
Yeah,
for the
he's
Star
going to
City
grind. So
app.
is Brad Nelson.
Yeah, the two of them are. So right now, if you look at the leaderboard, there's Andrew Tenjum, who right now would be the last person in at 108,
Yep.
I believe, and then Jim Davis, Eric Rill, and Jeff Hoagland tied at 106.
Yep.
So the four of them are the front runners to get that last spot, and there's a pretty decent gap between Tenjum and the next person ahead of him, because you have to skip over BBD. So the next person ahead of him, I believe, is Logan.
Yep.
At 118.
Yep. Logan's 113.
Okay.
So
113. Sorry.
Yeah.
So he's not that big of a gap. So I think you're going to see all those guys grinding pretty hard over these last few months, as well as Brad and Todd, who are not too far behind. They're maybe 10 or so points behind them. And I mean, if you have a good weekend, you can make up a ton of points. It's essentially what I did when I was an afterthought on the leaderboard, somewhere in the 28, 29, 30 range, and then Providence happened, and suddenly I was in the top 10. And I mean, I had been looking and trying to get points and going to some IQs in addition to my opens to try to get into the conversation for an at-large bid, and I've been fortunate to have the summer that I had, and now that I'm in a position where I can sort of take it easy, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's got to be nice. So getting into it, getting into such a large tournament, $50,000, 16 competitor, tournament, it's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, and not having to worry about all the events this season to really qualify, I can slow down and start thinking about the Players' Championship itself and preparing for that. So you're definitely going to see me look at how this Legacy metagame is shaped and especially how it affects Elves, trying to figure out if Elves is even going to be a good choice for that tournament.
So we could actually see you play something other than Elves on stream?
Oh, yeah. Anything's possible. I will play whatever I think is the best deck, and I will put in the hours I need to put in to be proficient with it.
Well, I will tell you this, sir. If you have to grind on Moto, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
I tend to grind a lot of games, so for long hours. So if you need help, let me know. As always, I say our sponsor is cardholder.com. They kind of help me out on that one. So if you need certain matchups tested, let me know. I can make that happen.
Will do. Yep.
So I'm just looking at it. What was the format they announced? I know it was the Players' Championship got a different format than normal. I was trying to find that out.
Well, the structure of the event is very different than a typical Magic tournament. It's all Standard and Legacy in terms of the format that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just Swiss rounds.
Isn't it like three? It's like 3 Standard, 3 Legacy. And
so here it is. I can do my best attempt at explaining it because it's a little complicated.
Yeah.
If you can't tell it, if you don't know Matthias, or if you do, you can easily tell it's a Matthias Hunt creation.
I don't know him, but
he's sort of a mad scientist. But so it starts with 16 people, of course, and they are going to divide us into 4 pods.
Mm-hmm.
And each pod will specifically have 1 season winner and 1 invitational winner,
mm-hmm.
and then 2 at-large bids will go into each pod. And all of that will be at random. And then within each pod, you're going to play round robin.
Yep.
No draws allowed.
Which is nice. I like the no draws.
Yeah.
So no time on the matches, just go dealer done?
I believe so. Yeah, they have to do that then. So you play round robin, 3 rounds of standard to start. If you win your pod, you're into day 2. You can rest.
Nice.
If you third and fourth in each pod. Third from one pod will play fourth in another pod in a match of Legacy, I believe. I'm not sure which format that is.
I think
they'll play a match.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll play a match, and the loser of that match is eliminated. So then you'll have the winners of the elimination matches between third and fourth seeds, and all the second place finishers in each pod, and that'll be a group of 8, and then they will play a double elimination bracket of Legacy to determine the last 4 people to make day 2. So you'll have 8 people in day 2. Then in day 2, those 8 people will be divided into 2 pods of 4. You'll play round robin within your pods. If you win your pod, you're into top 4. If you're 4th in your pod, you're eliminated. Second from one pod plays third in another in a single match of Legacy again. And the winners of those 2 matches will be the last 2 slots in top 4. And then top 4 will be best of 5, standard, single elimination from there.
No, I don't have a problem.
That is
with
madness.
Yeah, it is complicated on the surface.
That's crazy.
The idea is to try to get a system where there is as little structural incentive for collusion as possible, so every match matters, and you're in control of your own destiny for the entire tournament, and it does accomplish those goals. I have a few minor qualms with it, but overall, it's a pretty solid way to run a tournament. And the one thing I'm worried about is one, how they're going to handle ties within a pod. If you have a pod that's 1-0-3 and 3 2-1s, who's first place? Is it going to be based on game record in your matches, or just at random? Because it's not like you can use the traditional tiebreaker system that Magic has, other than game win percentage. And game win percentage could very easily be tied as well when you're only playing 3 matches, or it can be so close as to be I'm not sure. And I don't like the idea of people that can possibly be eliminated so quickly in the event. So the nightmare scenario I have, which doesn't necessarily have to come up that often, is this pod that is an 0-3 and 3 2-1s, and whoever loses out on the tiebreaker lottery, whatever it may be, has to play a match for their tournament life when they 2-1. And if they lose that match, they went 2-2 in the tournament, and they're dead.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that I think that's rough. Hopefully it doesn't happen to anyone.
And the 0-3 that they
idea
played goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, possibly, yeah. The idea that
that
can
seems
happen
kind of unfair.
is a little rough. That you can't. It's going to be. It could be tough to recover from slow starts in this event. You're not going to see somebody start 0-3 and then, I guess, not going to see somebody start 0-4 and then move on from that for sure. They could start 0-3 and then win a bunch of matches to make day 2. So that there are some storylines, but it's tough for them. Like, they have to devise an entirely new tournament structure that they can fit within whatever time constraints that they have reasonably. I'm sure they're going to want to show and broadcast as many of the matches as they possibly can. So they really don't want to have too long of a tournament. It's only 2 days, so you can't play hundreds of matches or whatever. So I think they did a pretty good job of it, and it's going to be a really awesome event for everyone involved and everyone watching. I think you're going to see the viewership numbers for this event be very high.
Well, yeah. I mean, the viewership numbers for New Jersey was in the 13,000 when I
Really?
saw it. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. It was,
I obviously don't get to see those things as they happen.
It was kind of amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, yeah, I understand it was the first standard of cons, and so you have every Magic nut that, like us,
Watching it.
that do this podcast, wanting to see what people have come up with. And of course, then I watched Ross Merriman come out with green black and no actual cards from cons. But I mean, whatever.
Don't need them.
I mean,
Don't
I
need
can't-
them.
I can't say anything wrong against that. I mean, CVM did the same thing when was it?
Play what you know.
Yeah, it was play what you know. So
It's like, instead of speculating on cards that might be good, play what you know is for sure good. And then next week, when you see what all the cards that were good, you can add those into your list.
Know what I know is good?
That's
Basic
completely fine.
lands and making a ton of mana with Nykthos. Did it for the last 8 months. We just had to change the color. I got my electroshock therapy to say green instead of blue. Make sure we didn't make that mistake. So we were good to go.
hey, you know,
my basic
you've been
things.
doing it, and I've been doing it. We at the store, my store said, and I don't know if your store said the same thing. We went back to Haymaker Magic. Really, it's
Yeah, if maybe not Haymaker Magic per se, but definitely we're trending toward and have been trending towards and have arrived on board Magic. We're doing a lot more on board Magic than we used to.
Yeah.
And I think the variety is good. It's not like you can't play in your hand reactive instant speed Magic. We've seen people do that, and we saw it with Revelation for 2 years. And it was a very good strategy. So instead of having that be all Magic is, we now have a lot more variety, and I think that's good. And the onboard Magic in particular is very good for coverage. It's very difficult to cover a match where both players are holding their cards close to the vest. You don't have a hand cam like we do in poker, although maybe we should. And so the commentators are trying to get whatever brief glimpses they can get at someone's hand, and then they try to have to explain exactly what this cat and mouse game is to the viewers, whereas when both players are just sort of slamming Thrag Tusks and Restoration Angels and Polucrinoses and Butcher of the Hordes, people can sort of see the swings that go back and forth, and it's not like the swings are any less interesting from a gameplay perspective. These tense race sort of games, or one where some person is struggling to stabilize and then turns the corner, these games are still very fun to play, very interesting for me to think about and to game plan for. So all we've done really is add a lot of very varied types of games to the pool, and that can't be anything but good.
Yeah, that's what I completely agree. I mean, you can go 2-color now, you can go single color, you can go 3-color. There's even been a few 4-color dips. I mean, you can go across the board and still have a very strong deck out there.
Yeah.
So
I think one thing is people like the mana so far. Looks like last weekend did a lot of damage to the users, like a lot of pain lands, a lot of mana confluence. We saw even the fetch lands. Obviously they do damage to you unless you've got Courser out or whatever. I think people maybe are going to scale that back a bit and play the Guild Gates that gain life, the refuges, a little bit more if the format is still as aggressive, because we really saw that Jeskai deck just killed people because they did so much damage to themselves. They'd be playing Siege Rhino and getting 1 life instead of 3, and it was a really big deal. Usually getting 3 life saves you that 1 hit from their Mantis and drains them, obviously, and then gives you this nice threat. Well, now it doesn't really save you that much life, so the Mantis is still going to kill you real fast. And yeah, you're attacking them as well, but they're attacking you, and they have burn spells like Jeskai Charm and everything too. So maybe the tap lands will come back. That's one thing I could see happening.
The lands in this format, I think, are going to be very interesting throughout the entire time that this format exists the way it is. When you saw 2 years ago in the Innistrad RTR standard, where the mana was just excellent. You had shock lands and buddy lands that went together perfectly and let people play these 20 dual land mana bases that could play 3 colors super consistently. You basically could pick whatever card in those colors you wanted and put it into your deck, and didn't really have to make any changes to your mana base, and you even had Farseek on top of it. And then that had to be scaled back, where the mana really wasn't great this last standard format, and that was part of the reason that the Devotion decks are really good. You could play these 3-color shaky mana base, and in some cases, especially with the green-white aggro deck, a 2-color deck with a shaky mana base.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just leverage the power of these Devotion cards that had a really nice payoff if you committed to them, and you got to leverage the power of Mutavault. And Manlands historically have been incredibly powerful throughout Magic's history because they give you something to do with your mana late while being mana early, so that they function at basically every single point in the game, and they really give you a lot of value over time. So Mutavault, while on the surface is sort of unassuming, like, yeah, it's a 2/2, like, does my deck really want this, ends up being super powerful because it was very unique in that format as really the only utility land. So we saw essentially 3/4 of the decks in the format play it in 3 to 4 copies, really. And the Devotion decks, especially Mono Blue and Mono Black, were the decks that were able to leverage the power of the card most effectively, and that's why they were the 2 best decks in the format. What we see in the current standard is mana bases that are doable from a color perspective. You can definitely build mana bases that get you all your colors, but there is a significant price to be paid. And so we have a very interesting balancing act on our hands that we have to play with. We have to try to figure out how greedy we can get with our colors and how greedy we can get with our life total. And I think those types of decisions where everything's on a sliding scale are super interesting, because it really fights stagnation, where you can change your deck maybe by 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 cards every single week to try to keep up with the metagame. As the metagame gets more aggressive, you need to scale back some of the damage you take. Then maybe you have to cut some of the cards and cut one color down to a splash. As the format slows down, maybe you can say, sure, I'll take more damage. Now I can add more powerful cards to my deck because the format's slower. I need that power. And so you'll see decks, rather than sort of working towards an endpoint and getting to one 75 card list that is everyone's base. I mean, I spent 8 months playing mono blue. I think if you took the intersection of every single deck list I played, you might get 63 out of 75 cards.
Yeah, I was about to say, that did not vary that much.
Yeah, and to be fair, that format was anomalous in Magic's history, other than formats that were broken by a certain deck. So we really shouldn't be taking that as a baseline, but the point still stands that when we have this interesting tension between two competing forces like we have with the mana in this format, it's going to really fight the tendency for the hive mind to stagnate and create tuned lists that get us to a sort of like a Nash equilibrium, where you just get to a point and don't want to change it regardless of what everyone around you is doing. Everything that you do is going to change based on what other people are doing.
Yep.
And so that'll keep everyone on their toes on a weekly basis, which is important as well for a tournament series like the Open Series, which tends to favor people jamming the same deck over and over again. And I've certainly been guilty of taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be happy to not see the same two decks dominate Standard for
Yes.
15 months. That was a little boring.
Standard deck. That's how excited I am for this.
What?
Brutus
Man made a
Standard deck?
Wait, whoa. You know that Maze's End isn't legal, right?
I know. Don't
You know you're not allowed to use that
I came
card?
up with some other shenanigans, okay?
Wow.
What
I'm
are these
impressed.
shenanigans?
I'm actually going to be playing the blue-red artifact deck that pretty much uses like all the M15 stuff in there. I did grab a couple of the stuff from cons, like the Ghostfire Blade and Ugin's Nexus and stuff. So I'm actually going to be playing Standard tomorrow to actually test it out because I haven't had a chance to really test it yet. So
I brewed a blue artifact deck the other day and sent it to one of my friends testing for the Pro Tour.
Oh, nice. See? Look at
it has some tools.
See,
I like
I
the
thought
Chief
blue, red,
Engineer
burn.
Scuttling Doom Engine combo. That's pretty sexy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. I had those, Illusory Angel, Ornithopter, Ghostfire Blade, Springleaf Drum, Phyrexian Revoker, which is really good against all the mana creatures. Yeah, it has some things.
The card
I
I,
have,
really want to break is Villainous
Master
Wealth.
Waves and Hall of Triumph. Villainous
Ooh,
Wealth.
Master of Waves in there too.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
I like the idea of curving a Chief Engineer into a Master of Waves for like 3 or 4 tokens, and then using the tokens to convoke out a Hall of Triumph immediately to check the Master Waves. I'm not sure if you have enough other blue creatures to make that work consistently, and the Hall of Triumph might end up just getting cut, and you'll rely on the power of Master of Waves anyway. Maybe you'll just convoke out a Scuttling Doom Engine or something. That's probably good.
Right.
But there's
Or
some
Soul
really
New
interesting
Phyrexia, you could
synergies.
always scuttle out, convoke out
I-
nice big soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't fit too many 6s in your deck, and I'm almost positive Doom Engine is the better of 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 7th Soul
be
is where you want to
stuff
be.
Especially if you have red for Shrapnel Blast, because then the damage from Doom Engine gets really nasty.
Yeah, I've got red in
God.
there for Shrapnel Blast, Stoke the Flames, and my Rabble Masters.
There's a lot of red cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't do the whole devotion to it, but we'll see. Because tomorrow I'll be testing it for the first time, and then I can kind of decide really how I want to play it.
Have you watched the Versus video from this week with Brad and BBD, where Brad plays the blue artifact deck?
No, I haven't yet. I'm going to have to now.
Yeah, check that out. Brad gets smashed, but
Yeah.
there's some obvious deficiencies in his list, and the first game in particular is super long and super interesting. It's like a 37-minute video, and I think game 1 takes 18 to 20 minutes of that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, he made it mono
Actually,
blue.
Master Waves would have been really good in that deck. Like, he had enough blue symbols to at least run like 2. The card's just really powerful, and it does help with that convoke. I think he wasn't running the Doom Engines. He was running
Juggernaut.
what's that card? Yeah,
Juggernaut.
Juggernauts instead.
Big Jugs.
That was an interesting choice.
Interesting.
Huh.
rumbling past those Sylvan Caryatids. Although, actually, it says can't be blocked by walls, and most things aren't walls anymore. They just have defenders.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah,
true.
I don't think that interaction actually comes up. Can
There's
be
like
blocked
3
by
walls
Sylvan.
in the format, and none of them are standard playable.
It doesn't make
Unless
any
you're running
sense to
some
me
kind of crazy
why they
Fenix
didn't
deck.
errata every single wall to be like. I mean, they errated every wall to have defender, but they didn't errata all these cards that deal with walls to just target creatures with defender.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what all these cards were meant to do anyway. Why didn't you just make that errata? Like instead they just separate. Like at the point where they changed to that rule or introduced defender as an ability, things just work differently. It's very strange to me. But who
You
am I
know,
to judge?
they've errated so many different things, and it just at times you're like, yeah, and then you're like, why didn't you just do it this way? It would just made it so much easier on us.
Time Vault's got
21-year-old
5
game, man.
cards.
It's gonna have to happen.
So my biggest, like I say, Villainous Wealth is one of those cards I really just want to break, because I want to steal their stuff.
He needs to have Delve. If that card had Delve, whew.
You put Delve on that card, unless you make it cost like triple X.
Yeah, even if it could be like XX with Delve. I think this is something I can work with.
It's something a lot of people could work with.
Yeah.
I agree, and it would be sweet. I'd like the Genesis Wave Euro library. All right, cool.
Oh my god, that'd be awesome. Sorry, get on tangents. Why do we get on tangents? So let's talk about
Stick.
Ross as Ross himself. Now, Ross, is there a Mrs. Ross, Merriam?
There is not. I
Okay.
am far too young for that.
Oh, why does everyone say far too young? Now I feel old.
It's because you are old.
Well,
Thank you.
Pat, there's a reason. Hey, man, you already said that your girlfriend was, she's been talking, so it's not much longer for you. You're
I
still
know.
gonna be old.
Probably this time next year I'll be engaged. So
Wow, so old.
I know.
Open bar at the wedding.
Of course. What kind of wedding wouldn't have an open bar?
I know.
You
That's the
got
one
to.
question I ask
Got
my friends
to.
who are all getting married now. Open
Yeah.
bar. As long as
Is
it's
it
open,
at least
I'll
a
be there.
toonie bar? Oh, you guys don't have those.
Ross, you
Okay,
would have been proud. We had
Yeah.
good beers at our wedding.
it's a
So,
$2
I
coin.
liked it.
$2
you have?
coin.
well, I was until I got diagnosed with celiac, a beer snob. So I drank nothing but dark, and if I couldn't see anything, if I could not look through the glass, it was a good beer for me.
Good man. Good man. I love
See-
Jet Black.
Yep.
I like the dark beer, but I'll drink more than that. As I'm not
I-
quite on the snob level.
I'm
'Cause you're
expanding my
Canadian.
taste as well. Tonight I had a Flemish sour ale. That was quite good.
Ooh, sounds
Yeah,
delicious.
I'm moving into
That does sound
sours and
lovely.
trying to explore that territory. This was Monk's Cafe. It's actually brewed by a brewery in Belgium for a cafe in Philly. And
Interesting.
they sell it to local establishments. I was able to get it in my hometown.
Yeah, I tried. I was a big fan of like the stouts, like chocolate stout, and
Yep.
yeah, anything
Pure
like
Russian Imperial Stouts, love
oh
those.
yeah, Russian Imperials. Just oh my god, if I could like chew it when I drank it, I was happy.
Yeah, the breadier the better.
Yep.
That's my first love when it comes to beer, the real heavy stouts.
Yeah, we have a
It's
place
like an
up
actual
here.
piece of bread in your beer. You're like, this is perfect. Thank you. I'll have more.
Yeah. If you serve it in a brandy snifter and sip it over the course of 2 hours, it's perfect.
Yeah, everyone's like, why don't you
If
get
it won't
drunk?
leak
I'm
through a
like,
bread bowl.
they're like, why don't you get drunk? I'm like, because I don't need to. I can then just sit here and enjoy my beer as a taste.
You can sip those Imperial Stouts and get pretty drunk. They're
Yeah.
10-15%.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
they're strong.
I still think the worst one was when we have a place here, Beers of the World. They literally import all the beers. Like, as if they can get their hands on it, they import it.
I'm scary in a place like that. I have
Yeah, I
no
used to.
money
It,
and no pants.
it used to be like a $200 day easy for me to walk in there and just walk out, and I'd be like, I only hit one aisle.
It's a good
Yeah.
day.
And they had from Germany Spaten. They had actually gotten from Spot, and they had their optimators, which is like on the shy side of 15.
Nice.
And it's not a dark beer; it's a little lighter. And I had
Yeah,
about
the German beers tend to be lighter.
yeah, and I had about 6 of them, And I remember waking up on my parents' floor.
It's a good place.
I like it.
It's nice and safe.
I don't know how
Yeah, exactly.
I got home
Safe
from
zone.
my buddy's house either. There-
Hardwood or carpet?
It was carpet. It was on the
Okay.
stairs. I was laying on the stairs. My father
It was
came,
on the stairs.
Yes. My father came down, kicked me, and said, "You have to go to work." And I said,
When was this?
It was about now
was
would
last
have
week.
been no.
Yeah,
it
that's
was
what I was
last
gonna.
week.
It's last week.
It's probably about 6 years ago. Oh no,
That was this morning. What are you talking
8
about?
years
We just
ago.
woke up
Yeah.
out here.
it's about 8 years ago, and that was the last time I drank Spaten, because that stuff just wreaked havoc on me. My father's like, "How did you get home?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea." So now I'm on the hard
I lost
starters.
all my car keys, in my pants, so clearly I didn't drive.
So now I'm on the ciders since I can't have gluten or anything like that.
I like cider
Yeah,
too.
cider's so good.
I'm awaiting the return of the winter seasonal for woodchuck from their. I don't know what they call it. It's a limited release
Yeah.
barrel aged.
Right.
Yep.
So this is it's a bourbon barrel aged cider.
I love that one.
It is incredible.
You know which one is my favorite though out of them? The woodchuck is the fall.
You like the fall?
The fall cider
Check
because it tastes like you're drinking Halloween or like Thanksgiving. Like it's got like the little hints of
I don't know, I
cinnamon,
wasn't.
and
Yeah, I'm not a big cinnamon fan, so I never really enjoyed that one.
I liked it.
I want to
My-
drink Halloween.
This is not your season, my friend.
That sounds
You don't
great.
It's
enjoy
not. It is not. I'll stick with my regular ciders.
You know, it's actually nice. Ross is only about 10 hours away from me, so we could just hit the bar anytime we want. You know,
Yeah, only
It's a
10
long
hours.
drive to get to the bar.
whatever. I have a Jeep. I can sleep in said Jeep. It's okay.
Middletown is known locally for its bars. Got like 3 or 4 right on Main Street.
Nice.
Nice.
One that has a million beers on tap.
Yeah, we have one out. We have one out this way that has. They pride themselves on almost 150.
Yeah.
I used to go there after work and just go down the list and just start. That's the way to
I
go.
think I'll start at X today.
Where did I leave off? So, all right. So, no Mrs. Ross Merriman. So, any female listeners, you know, Ross Merriman. Ross, favorite card?
Really good at Magic, and he'll probably let you borrow his cards. So get in there.
Favorite card of all time, Ross?
Armageddon.
You like destroying lands.
Excuse me, I
like
need to leave
not
the
only
call.
destroying lands, but destroying my opponent's hopes and dreams. And that's what Armageddon does. You're playing
I-
a game, and you've fallen a little behind, and you're like, okay, this isn't going that well, but when it's not hopeless. We can get back into this. We can crawl our way back in. I just need to maybe like draw a removal spell the
Cast
next couple
Frontload.
turns. Yeah, figure out how to sequence my spells, land my bomb or something, and then they cast Armageddon, and you look at the board, and you look at your hand, and you're just like, well, I can't possibly win. Those are the games I like to play. I like to be the person that makes my opponent realize that they can't possibly win when I knew that they couldn't win for the entire game because this Armageddon was sitting in my hand.
You kill them with like a Thalion and a Elite Vanguard, and you're like, yeah, man, for a turn. Can't do anything about it. Check out my 2/1s.
They might have like one more dual land in their hand, but you have a Knight of the Reliquary in play, which is now like a 12/12 because you just cast Armageddon. So they're probably dead to it anyway. But if not, you can just fetch up a Wasteland their one land just to make them feel even worse.
Oh
I-
my god.
I am that special kind of asshole.
You
Dude,
sure?
I
you just see that in
approve.
Cube, and you like slam it every time. You're just like, all right,
Slam
let's do
Armageddon?
this.
Yeah, Armageddon.
In
When I
Cube.
cube.
Yeah.
Oh, I-
that's
I
fire.
love playing the White Weenie decks in Cube just because I can Armageddon people, and they tend to
They're
be
very
good against
strong
them.
too.
Yeah, they're pretty underrated in non-powered Cube. That is.
Yeah, I don't want that in powered Cube. That's for sure.
I mean, you can still cast Armageddon in Power Cube, but you just take a bunch of sweet artifact mana cards, and then suddenly
Right.
you have 10 mana and they have 2.
Oh
It's
my
like your
God.
blue upheaval Armageddon deck, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm doing awesome things. I don't know what you're doing.
I either like to give my opponent this sort of glimmer of hope that they might be able to win when the entire time I know I'm just going to slam the door in their face as abjectly as possible, or I want to play a game where I dominate my opponents so thoroughly that they just want to leave and drop from the tournament. And that's the kind of deck that Devotion is. Sometimes you just end the game with 30 permanents in play, and your opponent's like, are we even playing the same game? Like, is this Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, why is that a 5,000 in play? They just don't quite understand how they've gotten into that situation, but they just want to get out.
Oh my God, you are my hero because I do the exact same thing. You are amazing, sir. Thank you.
That's how Magic should be played. It should be brutal.
Exactly.
Everyone calls me an asshole for doing it. Why do I?
No mercy. Pat, I already told you. It's because you keep touching their cards. Like, come on.
The key is to embrace that moniker. Just embrace it. Like, yeah, that's who I am.
I actually have at the store. That's why I decided Jeskai Control had to be built. Just because I had to be that guy on week 1 running End Hostilities main deck. And watch them cry when I Aether Spout their 4 creatures attacking me.
And then
So I feel like you lost your best card for that, which is Elixir, and you say something like, "This Elixir is made from your tears" when you crack it. It's like you actually want to make them sad. That's the card.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I was playing a Devotion deck, by the way, Ross, against one. He literally had the board loaded, and then he looked at me and goes, "What are you gonna do?" And I said, "Just attack." So he literally swung with everything, and I spouted him, and he just scooped.
Nobody sees the Aether Spells coming.
Yeah, I want to see that.
This is so funny.
I want to see that change in my opponent's demeanor, where they're confident and they're sitting up in their chair, they got their shoulders back, their chest out, and they turn their guy sideways, and then you just slam something on the table, and they look at it, their eyes bug out a little bit, but they try to compose themselves because they're playing a game of Magic. They don't want to give up any sign of weakness, but they just sort of, within the next maybe 3 or 4 seconds, come to the realization that they have been completely blown out, and their shoulders slump, and their hand sort of goes limp, and you just have them defeated. It's like a wounded gazelle. They've been running from you, and they're just tired, and they're just like, nope, you got me. I'm just gonna lie here, and I'm done.
Oh my God!
I want to see that vitality just drain from their eyes.
Oh my God! That's why I play it. That's exactly why I played it. It's the greatest card. People never expect Aether Spout. Never.
Just name it Siphon Happiness, and then we're good.
I actually, I was playing at Pro Tour San Diego, the RTR Block Pro Tour.
Okay.
And I was playing the black-green aggro deck. It was not very good. I spent the entire time trying to not play Revelation deck because I didn't feel comfortable playing it in a field of better pilots, and that was just stupid. So I played a bad aggro deck, and I'm playing against Andrew Shrout day 1, and we're like 4-1 or something. And he's playing blue-white-red control. And the green-black aggro deck had Deadbridge Goliath at the top of its curve.
Yes.
I was not like the card wasn't very good, and I was down to 2 and probably should have been down 0. And I ended up adding back up to 4 because I got super scared on the last day of Blood Baron, which everybody had started playing in the Esper decks, which was the most popular version of the control deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I had these like bulky 4-mana 5/5s that I didn't really like in my deck. And we're playing game 2. I lost game 1. And I sort of flood on them. I draw 3 of them. So I land 1 on turn 4, and I land 1 on turn 5, and I think about attacking with my 5/5, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Just let him Azorius Charm it, and I don't really get to get anything out of my attack step. What I want to do is like play all of them, and then start like attacking with all of them until Azorius Charm 1 at a time. And so I spend 3 turns 4, 5, and 6, playing these 5/5s, and he hasn't really interacted with me. He hasn't had a verdict, so I'm like, well, that's really good for me. Passes the turn, I untap, and I attack with all 3 of them, and he casts Etherize.
Oh.
Etherize. And I was the person whose life drained from my eyes as I looked at this draft comp
Which one's
that
that?
had somehow made it
That's
into
the one
this
that
constructed deck.
sends back all attacking creatures to your hand.
Yeah.
Bounces them all?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
just hopelessly far behind at that point.
That
Could never
sounds sad.
possibly win the game. I mean, Shroud ended up going on to top 8 that Pro Tour.
Yep.
Sometimes you're on the wrong side of those types of games.
Now, speaking of Pro Tour, you're not
Luke,
going
yeah.
to Hawaii?
I am not. I lost many matches that would have qualified me for it, and as a result, I don't get to go to my tropical paradise.
Yeah, how close are you? Are you like silver or what?
No, I don't think I have any pro points from last year. I have actually. It depends where Grand Prix Worcester fell, because I started 12-0 in that Grand Prix and then lost 3 win-ins for a top 8 to finish my tournament.
That's rough.
Ouch,
It was actually wrote
12-0 to not making it into
was.
the top. It's pretty brutal.
Yep. And I lost in the semis of a PTQ a month earlier. That was modern. I just was playing the Lyropod, which is the deck I've played in modern for the last 2 years, and was playing its burn and kept a very weak 7 that I should have just mulliganed in game 3. Was very soundly punished.
That is no good. I can feel those punishments. So yeah.
Definitely the closest I've been to qualifying for a Pro Tour in a little while. Like San Diego was the last one I played, and I qualified for that one early in the season, early in the PTQ season for it. I've as much success as I've had recently on the Open circuit. I have not had much success on the Wizard circuit playing PTQs and Grand Prix.
So with 2015, then are you going to change your sights and maybe go towards the Wizard circuit, or are you going to continue to kind of say I'm going to grind out?
I've been playing both the entire time. No one has noticed me playing on the Wizard circuit because I haven't done well. So I have slowly shifted towards playing more Star City events as they've become more valuable for me with the Players Championship. And but I still play 6-ish PTQs a season for any Pro Tour, and I play local Grand Prix. I'm actually just today I got convinced to fly to Nashville in November for the Team Grand Prix. So
I might see you there.
Yeah.
Team City of the Gathering Grand Prix? Okay, I'm not going to be there, but you guys are.
You're not going to be there.
Okay, I'm not going to be there. Now there's name, but Pat's going to be there.
Yeah, most likely.
I'll be teaming with Brandon Nelson, who just recently won a Grand Prix,
Yep.
and Annie Davudi. They're good friends of mine.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll probably be taking 2 guys from my store down. I tend to be that guy that just kind of says this is what we got to build and this is what we got to do. So, and I'm very greedy on my mana, so we'll see what that works out to be.
And then your teammates probably said something like, Pat, we can't all play 5 colors. Listen,
5 color stuff
let's
does
spread
not
it out,
work.
make 3 good decks instead of 1 good one and 2 bad decks.
This sealed format looks really sweet, and the
It
one
is.
issue I have with it is sometimes you get pools where the gold cards and the fixing don't really align. And in
It's
Team
true.
Sealed, that just doesn't happen because you can play any of the gold cards and
Mhm.
any of the lands. You should have a good spread of lands across all 5 colors and all 5 guilds and all 5 clans. So I think this Team Sealed format in particular is going to be incredibly interesting and incredibly skill testing. I
It
think
is.
you're going to see a top 4 in Nashville that is very, very good.
I completely agree. We bought, 11 packs for Team Sealed?
12, I think.
12.
Was
Yeah,
it 12? Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
We dropped 12 on a table, me and my 2 buddies, and we ripped them open and started going through them, and I'm like, wow.
There's so many options.
I'm like, this
It's
is
not like
ridiculous.
Theros where you just built a heroic deck, a black devotion deck, and a green ramp deck in
Yeah.
every single sealed
Yeah.
pool. You're going to have a ton of options, and
Oh, yeah.
it's going to be super fun. So
I think
that was made it easy for me to make the decision. But
Yeah, I think we popped a Sarkin and a few other really big bombs. But then, like, you had all this other, like, nice, easy mana to get you into all that. And it just was like, oh, my God. This sealed is just going to be... Team Sealed is just going to be unreal.
I think in my group of friends in the last couple of weeks, we've cracked close to a case of product and have yet to open a Sarkin. So you're very lucky.
You don't want to hear what my buddy did then. You don't.
They're basically mega rares. I'm
They
convinced
he's
they don't
on his
actually exist.
He's on his second box.
Yeah.
He's on 6 Sarkins.
What the fuck?
It's not right.
Yeah, this just.
So,
That's
you don't
just not how-
understand. Pat, you're one of those people, aren't you? Who just has like a stupid luck.
No, I don't
with
have it.
packs?
My buddy
Oh, you're
does.
not. Okay.
No, my boxes. My last good box was Theros. When I opened up Foil Elizabeth, and like a ton of like.
It doesn't even matter anymore. You got
Yeah.
that already.
I got a ton of other
Especially if
stuff.
you opened that when Elspeth was $40.
It was. Oh, it was.
Very lucky.
Brutal thing here is I opened half a box, and I had one fetch. And that was the only thing that's even playable in standard. Those are my boxes. One Bloodstained Mire got there. It's like, oh, this is a good one, guys.
Yeah, out of packs wise, I've gotten a Bloodstain and a Wooded. I think that was my 2 fetches. I haven't seen much of anything. I've actually had to go back to pre-ordering cards again because
Yeah, just buy them.
My buddy and I had some decent luck with what we opened, but got a couple of fetches. He got all the planeswalkers. I got 0 planeswalkers. So
I haven't seen a walker yet.
mm.
No, he literally will crack a box in front of me. Like I told him, next time I buy a box, I'm just gonna make him buy it, open it, and just give me everything.
Yeah, that's actually not how it works. See, you buy 2 boxes. He buys one, you buy the other, and then you randomly pick one. That way, the box that he buys with his luck is in the pool, and then one of you is gonna get a super good box. One of you is not gonna get a super good box. I've done this in the seal pools with a friend of mine who's super lucky. I take both our packs because we're always the same color. I make sure, and then just like mix them up and throw into him, and I keep one. And one of us always has an insane pool, and one of us always has a bad pool. So this is a tried and tested method. That's how you got to do it, Pat.
This is science we're dealing with here. Indisputable.
Yeah.
I will.
Just how-
I will have to try that then, because yeah, I have no luck. I mean, I opened up 4 boxes of Theros. I'd almost say a case of Theros by myself. Never saw an Ashiok.
Really?
Never.
Well,
I'm
that is
talking
the
Ashioks like
if I have to miss out on it, it's
all
that
the
one.
time during Theros.
I drafted Theros all the time. Never saw an Ashiok.
I want to
Yep.
say you're doing it wrong.
I work for a store, man.
Yeah.
I see product all the time.
Even I saw Ashiok.
Never saw an Ashiok.
Just a conspiracy. Ashok doesn't actually exist.
Oh, it does, because I played against it a few times. He exists.
That was a proxy.
Proxy.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
the proxy.
All right, Ross. I'll believe you on that
Everyone
one.
knows.
All right. So, favorite Elves card right now, even though we talked about this before stream.
We did talk about this, and it is currently Quirion Ranger.
I actually found one. I pulled one of my
I like the
Aquarian
choice.
Rangers out. It's right there.
Yeah. My pick here, 1, it's currently the most underrated card in the deck, and 2, when I first made a Moto account, which was actually pretty recently, a couple years ago, I started by playing Pauper, and I played the mono green Stompy deck, and
Yep.
Quirion Ranger was the best card in that deck. So
Mhm.
I've gotten to bond with Quirion Ranger across multiple formats, so we have a bit of a connection. It's possible that I could easily say Greenson Zenith there too, because I've played Zenith in Maverick as well.
Mm-hmm.
Quirion Ranger has a connection to Maverick too, because you played one Scrib Ranger in the Maverick deck, and they're functionally similar. So that all the subtleties to that kind of effect are they're just so lost on people that haven't played with the deck or against the deck a lot. I'm shocked at how frequently people dismiss that card when they are Thoughtseizing me or when they're deciding where to prioritize their removal spells, and that they don't realize that what it can do and how much mana you can generate just with that card
Mm-hmm.
if you sequence your operations correctly. And I actually in Edison this weekend played against an Esper player, Esper Deathblade, Adam Van Fleet, and he Thoughtseized me turn 1 when he was in the play. My hand was excellent. It was a fetch land, a Greenson Zenith, a Glimpse of Nature, a Natural Order, a Deathrite Shaman, a Wirewood Symbio, and a Quirion Ranger. It's like 1 land, 3 elves, a Zenith, a Glimpse, and a Natural Order. Almost perfect. If I draw a Guy's Cradle, it is literally perfect.
Yeah.
and he took my Quirion Ranger with his Thoughtseize, and it ended up being like insanely good. He realized that he couldn't fight over my win condition card, so he had to fight over my mana and stunt that. And I ended up bricking on lands the entire game, just stuck on one, and he just killed all my guys one for one, and got ahead that way, landed a Jace on turn 4, and ran away with the game. Just like, I had a great opening 7, and he absolutely crushed me. And I came away super impressed that he was able to diagnose how to correctly attack the deck and not get seduced by the power of the well-known cards. He actually looked at my hand and played the cards that I had. That's what most people don't do when they're playing against elves. They have in their head the idea of these certain cards that are really good that they have to watch out for, and it's good to have that knowledge coming in, but you still have to play a game of Magic against them. You still have to try to diagnose what their hand is doing and how strong it is in certain aspects, and then figure out where it's weak and attack them there. And he looked at my hand, figured out that where I could be weak was on my mana, and attacked me there. And then it correctly realized that when you're low on resources, Quirion Ranger is the most explosive card in the deck.
Oh, it is. It's by far one of the best cards in the deck.
Yep.
I am with it all the time. Yeah, that it's definitely yeah. Well, that's enough said. Return of
It's really like it really helps smooth out your mana specifically. Like, I think people undervalue bouncing your lands. Is you do against a lot of land drops. It's like a 17 land deck or 18.
It's actually 20, but
oh, is it 20? Okay.
With 4 Cradles and 2 Dryad Arbors as
Right.
pseudo lands, it functions as less than that.
Yeah. It's a pretty low land count deck, and oftentimes you're just bouncing a forest, or I think even in response to removal spells, you can bounce your Dryad Arbors. It's really nice there. Untapping your Deathrite Shamans. It just does everything. So
Yeah,
I think that's the underrated value of it.
you play a mana creature usually on turn 1, and then if you don't have another land drop and you play a Quirion Ranger, he's actually netting you a mana. You start this turn with 2 mana without a land drop, play a Quirion Ranger, and you float a mana, untap your guy by bouncing a forest, play your land for turn, and now you have 3 mana when you normally would have had 2, and you've already played a 1 mana spell. So you actually only see 2 mana in that instance, and he lets you go off from a very low number of resources by untapping your mana creatures or untapping a key 3rd creature for Heritage Druid. Everybody knows about the block your guy with Visionary and bounce it with Symbiote, usually to stop a GT from triggering, or just buying yourself time by soaking up some Tarmogoyf attacks or something like that. But you can do the same thing with Dryad Arbor. It's not quite as good because playing a Dryad Arbor is not nearly as good as casting an Elvish Visionary, but I mean, sometimes they'll try to set up a GT and they have the Swords to Plowshares to break up Symbiote Visionary, and I'll present them Symbiote Visionary, Quirion Ranger, Dryad Arbor, and they need 2 removal spells to break through that. You can set up these board states that are so difficult to interact with, but force them to interact, so they have to use their interactive spells in a way that is favorable for you, because they don't get nearly as much value out of them as they think they should. But even just bouncing Dryad Arbor in response to these mini sweepers that people have, like Self Persecution and Vulgary Charm, even Toxic Deluge, is very important at preventing them from gaining a ton of value out of those cards. I've remarked earlier that if you consider the board Quirion Ranger, Wirewood Symbiote, Dryad Arbor, and some lands or something, maybe a land or 2, that board is very threatening. If you let them untap with that, they're probably going to kill you if their hand is reasonable.
Yeah.
But how do you break that board up? You can play a 1-for-1 rule spell, that's okay. Well, or you can have a sweeper. If you play the -1/-1 sweepers that everybody has, you get 1 card. Because I bounce Dryad Arbor with Quirion Ranger, then I bounce Quirion Ranger with Symbiote, let the Symbiote die, and the Deathrite survives. You get 1 card for your essential hate card in the matchup. And you gain some tempo in the matchup by bouncing a few things, but the decks that have
doesn't really matter ourselves.
Well, the decks that have those -1/-1 sweepers are the mid-range decks, and they don't have enough of a clock to really punish you. It's really when they have a clock down. So a deck like Bug Delver, their Golgari Charms are very effective if they have Delver down, because they're able to really take advantage of the time that they gain by you having to redevelop your board. But a deck like Shardless Bug or Jund or Esper, Deathblade, Those -1/-1 effects out of those decks, yeah, they're good cards. Like if you have them, you should definitely bring them in because there are going to be some draws out of the elf deck where you get a ton of value, or you can kill their bounce guys and force them to commit more and get value there. And they're good, but they're not game breaking the way people really expect them to be. And even though Querying Ranger is a 1/1 elf and dies to those cards, it helps you play through them by bouncing your Dryad Arbors. And Querying Ranger is one of the 2 cards in the deck along with Greens and Zenith that I almost never sideboard out. I think I've sideboarded each of those cards out a single time. I brought out 1, and I immediately brought it back in for the 3rd game because I lost game 2. And I felt bad about siding them out. But there are matchups where you trim Glimpse. I actually trim that card a lot. There are matchups where you trim Natural Order, namely against Delver decks. You frequently trim Heritage Druid and Nettle Sentinel. Against fast matchups, fast combo decks, you tend to trim parts of the Symbiote Visionary package. And against Death and Taxes, I actually trim a Deathrite Shaman because they don't put lands in their graveyard, nor do they really put spells in their graveyard. They have 4 Swords to Plowshares.
Yep.
So he's actually not that effective. But Querying Ranger and Greens and Zenith, not only are these 2 incredibly powerful cards, they are super flexible, and they do so many different things that you never want to cut them out, and you always want to draw them.
I can completely agree. I can completely agree. I'm so crying right now, by the way. My fantasy team just buzzed my phone. Oh
shit! I didn't even check my fantasy team today. I hope my lineup is set well.
The Packers are up.
It's like football.
Packers are up 42-7.
Real
Ross.
sports? What?
Ooh, how is Jordan Nelson doing?
108 and a touchdown. 108 and a touchdown.
Oh yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, well, I'm
Jordan
playing against
Nelson.
Eddie Lacy right now.
He's been putting in some work.
And Lacey's got 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, so I am down by 42 points. My thing just told me. So I'm feeling pretty bad right now.
Man, if you guys want to talk about hockey from 4 years ago, I have things to add. That's about it.
Sorry.
My following of sports is Magic and esports. So I don't have time for real sports.
Oh, whatever.
Dude, Flash, turn it up.
Yeah.
Whatever. All right. So, any other questions?
I definitely don't follow the major sports as deeply as. What were you saying?
I said, any questions from our people watching? What? And while you tell your story, sorry, so I can gather questions.
Sure. Yeah, I don't follow the major North American sports as much as I did, especially spending a lot of time on the weekends playing tournaments. I still play fantasy baseball and fantasy football. I follow them a bit. I follow basketball actually a bit more now, especially with the influence of Cedric Phillips telling me all about it. The sport I follow a lot actually is tennis. Big tennis fan. I play tennis myself recreationally at least, and follow that a lot. So if there are any tennis fans in the Twitch chat, let me know. Unless you like Nadal, then just stay home.
Just go away.
Stay home. I don't care if you like tennis. If you're a Nadal fan, you're not a real tennis fan.
I mean, sort of. It's just tired of people denying Roger Federer is the greatest tennis player of all time because it's so obvious. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. I'll agree with you. I don't even follow tennis that much, and it's, like, obvious to me.
Yeah, he spent 4 years dominating the game in a way that is just unfathomable. Absolutely absurd. Won 11 majors in a 16-major span in 4 years. 11 out of 16.
That's just silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was silly. Like, it became news whenever he lost a match. He would lose, like, 5 a year.
It's like, well, I guess he won
like
again.
3 of those were to Nadal on clay.
Yeah.
He would lose 3 times to Nadal on clay, and like 2 weird matches that you're just like, what the hell happened? One of them was when he was recovering from mono. He only made the semis of that major. Only made the semis.
You know you're good
Awesome.
when.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're really good. So
Especially like,